Tuvasa the Sunlit versus Liliana Heretical Healer. Yeah, we'll get down the Dryad Arbor on turn 1, and then we can flash down a Seal Away on turn 2, assuming that our opponent doesn't kill our Dryad Arbor. Dryad Arbor's in the deck because we run Green Sun Zenith. And Green Sun Zenith you can use as 1 mana ramp on turn 1 if you can fetch out your Dryad Arbor. And this is a forest, isn't it? Yes, so we can get down the Sunpetal Grove untapped. We won't swing in with the Dryad Arbor because we might want to use Seal Away. Seal Away is a great new card from Dominaria. Flash, 2 mana, exile a target tapped creature an opponent controls. Oh, it's a tapped creature specifically, so yeah, we won't likely be using that this turn, but yeah, it is good to hold up Seal Away. A tapped creature is exiled until this leaves the battlefield. Jet Medallion comes down. We can actually use it in response to our opponent swinging in with Liliana, which I imagine they will do if all they have to oppose them is the Dryad Arbor, but we are going to get down to Tuvasa this turn, I think. Rest in Peace is really good against what I assume is a Reanimator deck. We'll get down to Tuvasa, gets a +1/+1 buff for each enchantment that we have in play. And then the first enchantment that we cast each turn draws us a card. Liliana Heretical Healer is a 2/3 with lifelink for 3 mana. That can come down this turn, even if our opponent doesn't play a land. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile Liliana and return her to the battlefield under her owner's control. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Decided to get down Cryptghast first. That will ramp our opponent, so we want to try and deal with that, but I don't know if we're going to be able to. A Plains helps. Let's go for Reflecting Pool over the Plains, and then yeah, we can get rid of that Cryptghast. Yeah, I nearly called it Bloodghast again. So that is white twice, and then 1 into X twice. And this will also draw us a card, because it is the first enchantment that we've cast this turn. We get into Satyr Enchanter, always nice to get into another Enchantress effect. Get rid of Cryptghast. And we'll swing in with our now 2/2 Tuvasa. We'll be on for 5 mana next turn. So maybe Satyr Enchanter and a Rest in Peace. See if our opponent gets into any kind of Reanimator shenanigans. Living Death just to wipe the board, very clever. Yeah, we'll just let that happen. There's nothing we can do about it. Luckily, we do have another Enchantress to get into in Satyr Enchanter. So now the plan is just to go for our Satyr Enchanter, and we'll hold up the Mystical Tutor. I don't think we want to get anything with Mystical Tutor. I think we'd rather attempt to draw into a land. But we can Rest in Peace next turn. We do have some graveyard shenanigans in the deck, but against a Reanimator strategy, I don't think, especially against mono black, they're not likely to do a whole lot against Rest in Peace. Oh, Lake of the Dead is sacrifice a swamp and add 4 to your mana pool. Okay, Gilded Lotus. And Hedron Archive really ramping out, only 2 cards left in hand. And then down comes Liliana, Heretical Healer. Yeah, I think we're just going to have to forego graveyard shenanigans in this game and go for the Rest in Peace. Fertile Ground, let me refresh my memory. I have a lot of these enchant lands and I forget what they all do. Yeah, we get an additional 1 mana from that. So I don't think we can actually use that. Actually, we can... Yeah, we can not worry about the rest in peace currently. So let's go for enchanting the fertile ground. We'll draw a card thanks to the Satyr Enchanter. Hoping for a land here. We do get a land, which is really good. It is a tap land, unfortunately, but it's better than no land at all. And then we will aim to seal away our opponent's Liliana Heretical Healer. It will cost them 2, 3, 4 mana to get back out, thanks to the Jet Medallion. So they can easily afford to cast it again. But whilst they're spending mana on recasting Liliana, they're not doing anything else that they're drawing into. Okay, deciding to swing in before they do anything. We can just go for the fertile ground. We'll add another white mana and then seal away. Draw a card from the Satyr Enchanter and get rid of our opponent's Liliana. Eladamri's Call could get another Enchantress. That's what these search for a creature effects are in the deck for. Recasting Liliana straight away and then going for Merciless Executioner. So all we can do about that is get rid of our Satyr Enchanter, and our opponent easily flips over their Liliana. Now then, they're not likely to go after their Merciless Executioner again, but they can do that with Liliana, -X, return a non-legendary creature from the graveyard to the battlefield. Here we are just discarding a card. I think we just have to go for Enchanted Evening. I'm just wondering if we've got 2, 4, 5, 6 mana next turn, so we can Sun Titan. We can Sun Titan and get back the Satyr. That is... that's potentially useful to us. Our opponent can get back the Satyr, not the Satyr Enchanter. They can get rid of the Satyr Enchanter again by getting back the Merciless Executioner. But I think we have to go for Sun Titan here. Yeah, we can encourage them to get back the Merciless Executioner. They only have 1 card left in hand. And then we can, next turn, hopefully... I'm glad we didn't get down the Rest in Peace now, because I think we're going to have to make use of more graveyard shenanigans than our opponent is. We can Seal of Cleansing and get rid of the Gilded Lotus and the Hedron Archive next turn if Sun Titan stays in play. Going for Read the Bones, scry 2, draw 2 and lose 2 life. And that Jet Medallion is doing a lot of work for our opponent, making black spells cost 1 less to cast. Might actually go for killing that and the Gilded Lotus. Sidisi Undead Vizier means that Sun Titan is probably not going to stick around for much longer. Either they go for an answer to Sun Titan now, or they just block when we swing in with Sun Titan next turn, which is something that we're planning on doing. I'm going to put a stop on the upkeep for Mystical Tutor, just in case we decide that we want to go with something like that. Alright, deciding to kill a swamp again with Lake of the Dead. No, undoing that and the land comes back. No, and now they've decided to opt for it again. Final parting is search your library for 2 cards. One goes into your hand, the other goes into the graveyard. They might have a Reanimate in hand. Oh, in fact, they can do that, can't they? They can search for Reanimate and throw Grizzlebrand into the graveyard. It's typically what black decks do. So now back to wishing that we'd gone for Rest in Peace. No, they've gone for Sheoldred. And now Dance of the Dead. So we'll have to sacrifice Satyr Enchanter. And then we discard a card. We'll have to go for... yeah, we'll just go for the Mystical Tutor. I'm thinking maybe Eladamri's Call gets the Eternal Witness to grab Sun Titan back. So I'm thinking it's going to die this turn. Yeah, we'll have to sacrifice the Satyr Enchanter, unfortunately. And then the stop on the upkeep doesn't need to remain. Sterling Grove we get into. Yeah, we'll just go for the Seal of Cleansing. That can blow up the Gilded Lotus. And then we will swing in at our opponent. We'll go in at Liliana. I imagine our opponent is going to block, but we'll grab Seal of Cleansing here. And then most likely going to block with Sidisi in the hope that it will get reanimated next turn. Now then, I think they actually, because they don't have multiple cards in hand, they can't get as much use out of Jet Medallion. Because they're in top deck mode, I think Hedron Archive is going to be more useful to them, so we'll go for blowing up the Hedron Archive. And then we will rest in peace and we'll go for an answer off the Sterling Grove. Yeah, I think that's okay. So we'll go for rest in peace so that our opponent will never be able to reanimate anything. And then we'll go Sterling Grove. And that gives all our enchantments Shroud. I don't think a black deck is going to do a whole lot about... Oh, they have to pay for this, Dance of the Dead. At the beginning of your upkeep, the enchanted creature's controller must pay 2. Ah, right, if they don't, it won't untap. Okay. Now, if they want any mana, they kind of... Oh no, Lake of the Dead does tap for black. I thought they had to sacrifice a swamp to get this to activate, but apparently not. Just coming in for 7 with the Sheoldred. Liliana got us to discard the Aladamri's Call. What's the limit break on that? You get an emblem whenever a creature dies. Yeah, the emblem actually doesn't matter because nothing... Actually, we're best not auto-yielding to that. I better turn that off. Well, Wasteland's pretty good against Lake of the Dead. So let's go for Sterling Grove into... I mean, what have we got? Well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think we'll just have to Tuvasa next turn. So let's just go for Detention Sphere. We will sacrifice our Sterling Grove. That will go into exile thanks to Rest in Peace. Yes, we'll play the Wasteland. And does that go on top of our library? Ah, right, it goes on top. I thought we were going to be able to do it this turn. Okay, apparently not. In that case, we can go for Tuvasa then, I think. If my maths is correct. Yes, we can. Well, that actually works out alright. We'll definitely Wasteland the Lake of the Dead. That takes our opponent down to 3 mana if they draw into a black spell. Oh, and actually shouldn't have got down Tuvasa, should I? Because I've got it in my head, I'm in autopilot. I'm thinking that Sheoldred isn't in play because I thought the Detention Sphere would end up in our hand by the end of the turn, so clearly didn't think that one through. Seeing as how it's going to die next turn anyway, we might as well block the Sheoldred damage and pretend that we did that on purpose. And we get into our Detention Sphere. We will exile Dance of the Dead because if our opponent manages to get rid of the Detention Sphere somehow, then Dance of the Dead will come back into play, but it'll have nothing to target. Our opponent will sacrifice Sheoldred and that will go into exile forever. And now it's just a case of attempting to get into something faster than our opponent does. I think they were on the reanimation plan. This Rasia doesn't worry me too much, although they can get some scry effects off with that. If we get into a land again, we can get down to Tuvasa again. I do wish I hadn't played that. Aura of Silence, do we want to hold on to? No, our opponent was playing ramp, so I want to make it difficult for them to get ramp on the go. I was just debating with myself whether I wanted to hold that for when we get an Enchantress out again. But I think, yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. We can just make it more difficult for our opponent to get down artifacts. Let's just read that. Artifacts and enchantments that our opponents cost 2 generic more to cast. That is, artifacts and enchantments that our opponents cast cost 2 more to cast. There we go. That was a bit of a tongue twister apparently. Starting to try to overrun us with zombies and just ticking up Liliana. We've kind of switched off Liliana and we are in top deck mode, so... Oh, and actually, yeah, that's... glad I got down the Aura of Silence now. Apparently I haven't learned that Liliana will cause us to discard, so... copy artifact. Might as well come down as a copy of Jet Medallion. I mean, we're not going to make use of that, but I think it stays an enchantment. Yes, it stays as an enchantment, so it will buff Tuvasa when she eventually gets back in. Kind of a war of attrition now. Our opponent is at least getting some stuff going. 2 and tap, discard a card, creates a zombie token. And then if they get enough zombies out, they'll be able to start using them for card draw. Alright, we draw and discard Cyclonic Rift. Clears a card off the top of our library. And we're going to be dealt 4 points of damage there. If that happens a few more times, then we are done for. But we get into Temple of the False God, luckily. So let's see if our opponent can find an answer for our Tuvasa. They may have one in hand. Out comes Tuvasa again. And it will be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. Yes, it will be an 8/8, +1/+1 for each enchantment we control. No point holding priority because our opponent knows that we have no cards in hand. Now if we could get into an enchantment next turn, that would be really good. Now because they've swung in with everything, I'm assuming that our opponent is doing something tricksy there, so we're not going to block. Exploration is at least a card draw. 1 mana to draw a card is fine. It also buffs Tuvasa. And we get into Nylea. And we'll just go after commander damage. If they take another hit like that next turn, then we will get commander damage off on them. Nylea, God of the Hunt, is an indestructible god. Other creatures you control have trample. And we can give a target creature a +2/+2 buff for 4 mana. Oh, that's a card, isn't it? That is an Army in a Can, Grave Titan. Best card ever printed. Really like Grave Titan, it's a very, very good creature card. And it's also a Death Toucher. So I need to do a little bit of maths here and see if we just swing in without tapping down anything, maybe our opponent doesn't know. Oh, and they decide to scoop. Let's see what we would have drawn into. Eternal Witness is useless. And yeah, I don't know if our opponent would have activated the Gaia Reach Sanitarium, but yeah, we would have swung in there. And maybe our opponent would have just blocked with the Grave Titan. That would have been 4 points of commander damage. That's 16. And then we could have activated Nylea a couple of times to get commander damage off, but maybe they knew about the Nylea and the activations on that. But if they didn't, maybe they would have fallen for that and we could have gotten commander damage off. We'll never know. Our opponent decided to call it a day there. That was Tuvasa versus Liliana. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.